Let's go to George Stephanopoulos with the first set of questions.
Thank you. And Senator Brown, the first question comes to you. What's the greatest threat facing America today, and what can you do as senator specifically to address it?
The greatest threat, without a doubt, is radical Islamic jihadists. They are looking to actually plant a flag in the White House. They want to disrupt, obviously, the Middle East and other parts of the world, export terrorism around the region of the world. It's something that's real, it's serious. Obviously, we have Boko Haram in Africa. We have ISIS. We have Al-Qaeda elements still. And their number one goal is to disrupt and dismantle the society as we know it. Senator Shaheen has called what we're discussing fear-mongering. I call it a very rational fear. And what we can do is to create consistency, because right now there's been hesitations and half-steps, as evidenced by Secretary Panetta. He has said that he wanted to leave troops in Iraq during the pullout. He made it very clear that he wanted to do that. The President did not listen to him, and as a result, we're having more and more trouble in that region.
Senator Shaheen, do you agree that's the greatest threat?
Well, I certainly agree that ISIS is a threat. I think a bigger threat is not having the commitment and the gumption here in this country to address the threat of ISIS, to address other threats facing this country. And I don't share my opponent's view that that ISIS or other terrorists are going to cause the collapse of this country. America is strong. We have the strongest military in the world, and we are going to take on this threat. We have a strategy to do that, building an international coalition. The airstrikes have already taken out hundreds of ISIS fighters, and we are working with over 60 nations, including Arab countries, to address this threat. What we don't need is our leaders raising concerns about our ability to take this on, because we can take on anything that America sets its mind to do, and that's what I'm counting on.
But Senator Shaheen, do you think it was wise of President Obama to rule out the use of ground troops to combat ISIS?
You know, we've already heard from General Dempsey, from the other generals, that we don't need ground troops at this time. If the President wants to send in ground troops, I think he needs to come to Congress. He needs to ask for an authorization for use of military force. And the fact is that when American interests are threatened, we reserve the right to take any action, and I think that's true in this case. But right now, we need to let the Iraqis, we need to let the Kurds, we need to let the people whose countries these are do the fighting, and we will support them.
So you're not ruling out ground troops?
What I've said is I don't think we should take tens of thousands of American troops and put them back into Iraq as an occupying force. That's what my opponent has suggested we should do. He said that we should think about an occupying force like we had in Korea. In an interview with Laura Kanoy, he suggested that. I don't think we want tens of thousands of American troops as an occupying force for 60 years as we've had in Korea.
Let me pose that to you, Senator Brown, because I was speaking to Speaker Boehner a couple of weeks ago, and he did say that American troops would have to go in on the ground if other countries didn't step up. Do you agree?
I want to rely on the generals on the ground, and that's the problem. The President and Senator Shaheen have already taken the greatest fighting force off the table. Well, ISIS is not taking anything off the table. And with respect to Senator Shaheen, we are a liberating force. We are not an occupying force, Senator. And I and every other person who served in the military resents the fact that you are calling us occupiers.
Well, in fact, what you have suggested and what others have suggested is that we should go back into Iraq. And you suggested, and my opponent suggested in an interview, that we should look at this like we did in South Korea. I don't think that's what we should be doing. We don't want to send tens of thousands of American troops back into the Middle East. What we do want to do is support the Kurds, the Iraqis on the ground as they do the fighting.
October 11th, we had an opportunity to sign a letter. Senator Ayotte, McCain, Lieberman, and I signed a letter to the administration. Please don't leave Iraq as is. Senator Shaheen, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, did not sign that letter. We're not talking about occupying forces. We're talking about leaving a transition force, as we've done in Korea, Germany, Japan, having the opportunity to have the Iraqi government lean on us when it's appropriate. To do otherwise is dangerous. To support the Kurds, we should have done it a long time ago. They're our greatest ally in that region. Finally, they're getting some assistance and making gains. The fact that you have called us occupiers, Senator, with respect, it's an insult to the men and women who have served. We are a liberating country for good. We are liberators, and it's an insult to the men and women that have served this country and given blood, life, and limb